Hello everybody, my name is Michael from Polygon Island, and welcome to a tutorial. I know it's been a little bit, sorry about that. Um, now, I have some things to say before this video starts, so I'll put a timestamp somewhere where you can skip to when the actual tutorial starts. Basically, I'll just be talking about why I haven't uploaded, and just different stuff like that. So just skip to that timestamp if you're interested in the tutorial, which you probably are, but if you're not and you want to hear this, then go ahead. But basically, a lot of the reason why I haven't been uploading is just because I haven't had enough motivation, and a lot of you have seen my last video that I posted, and if you haven't, it's unlisted now, so you can only watch it if you have the link. And I did that because I didn't want that to be like on the channel as the first thing people see. So for the people that did watch it, they completely understand why I haven't uploaded, but it's just lack of motivation, lack of ideas to upload anything. But I'm gonna try to start uploading consistently again, and I'm starting it off with a medium-sized tutorial, I guess. And if it works out great, then it's gonna look great. So, anyways, as always, all the resources that I use will be down in the description. The only thing that will not be, it'll still be in the description, but the only thing that is not free in this tutorial is CG Geek's Nature Asset Pack for Blender 2.8, which is $10 on the Blender market. But everything in that pack you can create yourself with textures and things that you can get like pretty much anywhere. But it's really easy to create the stuff that I'm using in this video, so yeah, you shouldn't be really worried about that. There's tons of videos on making nature assets. I'm sure you can find some. But anyways, let's get right into this. So the first thing that I want to do is make the terrain, the actual like terrain that we're going to be using for the scene. Now for the scene, I want there to be like lots of forests, lots of like plants or just grass, just a big forest basically. And then you have a guy sitting in the middle, crouched in front of this big glowing ring. So it's kind of mixing realism and then surrealism into one, and I think it'll look really cool. Now, I have not made this render before this tutorial, so this is my first time making it, so you'll be able to see some processes that I'll go through if I mess up. So this will be a little bit of a longer tutorial, just because of that. Usually I do make my scenes before I make a tutorial, but for the sake of this one, I just decided to wing it. So, yeah. So, we're going to hit Shift A on our keyboard and add a plane, and we're just going to scale it up a little bit to maybe right there-ish. Okay, so we have our plane, and technically you could just apply a texture to this and start putting down like trees and grass and stuff, but that is the most boring thing in the world, and if you do that, then you should feel bad about yourself. I'm joking, but it's always nice to have a little bit of like difference in your geometry. So instead of it just being a flat plane with the ground texture and maybe the displacement from the ground texture, I want there to be actual like sculpted like hills and like little bumps in the ground and stuff. So we're gonna do that. So what I'm gonna do to start off is I'm going to I'm gonna hit tab to go in edit mode, tab on the keyboard, or you could just go up here to where it says object mode and click edit mode. But I'm just gonna hit tab because that's a shortcut key, and then I'm gonna right click and click subdivide. Now don't click off of this, otherwise you'll lose this menu. Some people say that you can click F9 to get it back, but that doesn't work for me. I don't know why, but it just doesn't. So just go down here, click open the menu, and the number of cuts, I'm going to give it about 75 to start off with. If we need more, we'll just add a subdivision surface or something later. But now we can tab out of edit mode, and we can go up here and select sculpt mode, or we can just go over here to the sculpting tab. Now I'm just going to go to sculpt mode up here because I like it better. So now that we're here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and make sure that symmetry is off. If symmetry is on, you can see that it does exactly that. It reflects whatever you sculpt over the axis you have selected. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and then I'm going to basically just start sculpting some terrain. I want back here to be pretty filled up because that's going to be like the background area. So I'm just going to like fill this up a little bit bring some on the sides here. Might make like a hill going up here. And just keep sculpting. This is basically whatever you want your terrain to look like. And I'm not the greatest terrain sculptor in the world, as you can probably tell. But if you want, you can just do whatever I'm doing here. But I want the middle part to be semi-flat-ish, but not too flat. Then I'm going to bring this up a little bit more to like this maybe, and just bring some stuff out a little more. So this is basically just whatever you want to do at this point. And then to kind of work some things out, you can hit S to change to smooth brush, and that just kind of smooths out some stuff. So I'm just gonna run that over this a little bit and just kind of smooth some stuff out like so. Okay, so that's looking pretty decent right now. We can always go back and add some stuff later, but that's what I'm going to do for right now. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the ground texture to this. Now the ground texture isn't really going to be seen, but whenever you're making a nature scene, doesn't matter what it is, you always need a ground texture because it fills in the gaps between your plants and grass and flowers or whatever you have as your like main grass, I guess. And if you don't have a ground texture, you're just going to see white through it or whatever you have as your material. So I got a texture from cc0textures.com. It's a completely free PBR texture website. I love it. It's great. There's tons of textures on there. Pretty sure all of them are made in Substance Designer. Some may be scanned, I'm not sure, but they're really high quality textures. Normally they're you can download them in 2K, 4K, or 8K. I've downloaded the ground texture in 2K because again it's not going to be seen very well. I just want it to be there as kind of a filler. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into object mode by coming up here and clicking object mode once again, and I'm going to split our windows by going up here to where this little blender logo is, and then your cursor should turn into a crosshair, and just click and drag it over and it'll split your window. And then I'm going to go over here to this little, where this little gritter ball is, and then I'm going to click it and go down to shader editor, and then I'm just going to close this by hitting N, and now we have this. Now if you don't know what this is, if you haven't really used Blender a lot, or if you've used Blender but never really textured anything, this is basically where all your material nodes go, and nodes basically tell whatever it is you're using them on what to look like or what to do. So to get started, we can click this new button up here, and then we can see that it gives us a principal BSDF and a material output. Principal BSDF is basically your go-to. Every shader in one shader is what I like to call it. Before 2.8, this was a diffuse shader, and there still is a diffuse shader. You can add it in. Diffuse was basically your just base color shader, but this has all kinds of different stuff. Now we won't really be messing with this today because our PBR texture setup is going to connect to all these and tell it what to do by itself, which is pretty cool. So basically, if you just click this principal BSDF node and have Node Wrangler on, which is an add-on that comes with Blender. If you don't have Node Wrangler, you can go up here to Edit and then go to Preferences, and then go to Add-ons and just type in Node, and you'll see Node Wrangler. And then just check it, save preferences. If you have auto save preferences on, it'll automatically save. But yeah, just make sure that's enabled. And then if I remember correctly, Control-Shift-T brings up this, which is a principal or PBR texture setup for the thingy. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where I have my textures at, and then I'm going to hit A to select all of these, and then click principal texture setup. Now if we see here, it automatically brings in all of our textures and connects them to the right place. Now if you for some reason see that something is off or not in the right place, you can always connect it. see, this is the roughness map. It goes to the roughness. This is the normal map. Goes into a normal map node, which if you're doing this by hand, you can just Shift A and type in normal and make sure normal map and not the normal node. It connects to this and then connects to the normal and the principal BSDF. Displacement is optional. I might actually remove optional. I might actually remove this because it might not look that good. I'm actually going to remove this, but yeah, that's your basic principled setup, and it gives you these little boxes to show these are your mapping nodes and these are your texture nodes. Then it all connects here to our principal BSDF and then goes into our material output. So if we look in this right now, if we switch our render engine to cycles, because that's what we're going to be working in today, and I'm going to change my device to GPU compute because I have a more powerful GPU than CPU. If you're not sure if you have a more powerful GPU than CPU, if you have a laptop, then you're gonna have to know what GPU you have. You can look it up. It'll tell you what GPU you have. And if your GPU is at least half decent, it should be better at rendering than your CPU. And if it's not, you can always go back to CPU. So to make sure that your GPU is active and able to be rendered with, you can make sure the device is set to GPU compute. And usually if it's not selected, this will be kind of grayed out. You'll still be able to select it, but it'll just be grayed out. But if it is, you can go up here to edit and then preferences once again, just like we did to enable Node Wrangler, and then go down here to system, and then you have all these tabs. I have 2 NVIDIA cards, just regular NVIDIA cards. If you have RTX cards, then you're gonna have another tab. I completely forgot what it's called. It might be optics, actually. Yeah, but I have a 1060 and a 1050 that I use for rendering. They're 2 graphics cards in my computer, but you can just select one of these, or select both of them, or select all 3 of them if you want, and then save preferences, and you'll have your GPU ready to render. So now if we look at this, we should see that the ground texture has been applied, but it is really, really big. So we can see the ground texture looks pretty good, but it's just super big. So how do we fix that? Well, my friend, I'm glad you asked. You probably didn't ask, but hey, I'm going to tell you anyway, because you're going to need to do this. The answer is UV unwrapping, and UV unwrapping might sound a little bit scary. I've discussed it in a bunch of previous videos. I've done it in almost every tutorial I've ever done, except for maybe low poly tutorials. But basically what it is imagine you have a paper cube, and you take apart the paper cube and lay it flat on a surface, and you can see each face of that paper cube. That's basically what UV unwrapping is. It's taking your mesh, laying it flat, and then having the texture pasted on it. Now you can resize these, and you can reshape them, move them around, do everything like that to map the texture to it. Now, if you have a really big model, UV unwrapping gets really difficult. Well, not really difficult, but really time consuming. But since we just have a plane, it's not going to be that hard. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to click our plane, we're going to tab into edit mode with tab button, and we're going to right click, or we're not going to right click, we're going to click U, and then we're going to click Smart UV Project, and then click OK. And so now if we go into rendered mode again, we might be able to see that it did something, but the texture is still really big. Now basically what we just did is we just basically gave Blender the flattened out version of this mesh. And to actually resize the texture, we're going to have to go up here to this little ball where our shader editor is, and then go over to UV editor. Now we can see there's nothing really here, and if we click our mesh and then go into edit mode again, we can see that all of our faces, all of our vertices and everything are here, and they're mapped to a certain part of this mesh. Now to make the texture smaller on this mesh, we're going to have to make the faces bigger in the UVs. So to do that, if we come over here, make sure you're selected into this window just by clicking somewhere. If we click A, it'll select all of our faces and vertices and stuff over here. And then we can just click S and then just scale it out like this. And if we go into rendered view, we can see that it is now smaller. Now I do think it still needs to be a little bit smaller, so we're gonna go back into edit mode and just scale it up more, and maybe a tad bit more. And I think that's good enough for our ground texture. so we can see it looks decent now. So now that we have that done, we can start adding our grass, which yeah. So go ahead and save it if you haven't already. I'm just gonna save it as nature.blend on my desktop. We can go ahead and click our plane, right click and click shade smooth just to get rid of those visible faces in the viewport, and they might show up in the final render. It's always good to shade smooth if you don't want your faces and stuff showing. It's just a thing to do. So now that we have that, we're gonna start adding our grass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File and then Append. If you have this asset pack, then you'll follow the same steps. If you don't have this asset pack and are creating your nature assets from scratch, you should already have them in your scene, and if you don't have them in another Blender project, you'll do the exact same steps as this. So I'm just going to go to where I have my nature asset pack saved. I'm going to double click it and then just go into Objects and then hit A to select all and then Append. Now we can see it brings everything that was in that scene here. And there are a few unnecessary parts like the camera and light, so we're just going to click that, delete it, click the camera, and delete it. So now we have this set of, we have this set of nature assets. So we can see we have rocks, we have some grass, some flowers, and some weeds. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make sure that these are all what I think they are, and they are. So I'm going to select all the grass by shift clicking all of them, and then I'm going to click Control G, and then it'll bring up this little tab down here called Create New Collection, and I'm going to name the collection Grass. Collection is basically just a group with different things in it, and it's what we're going to use to give the put the particles down. And then I'm just going to click on the flowers. I'm just doing this from render view, so I make sure I don't click something else. I'm going to click the flowers, Control G once again, create new collection, and name it Flowers. And then I'm going to click these, and then these, Control G, and I'm going to name these Weeds. And then I'm going to click the rocks, and I'm going to Control G and name them Rocks. I probably won't be using the rocks as a particle system, but it's always nice to have them as a collection. Okay, so now that we have that done, what we're going to do is, before we actually put the grass down, we are going to tell Blender where we want the grass at. Now, we pretty much want the grass everywhere, but there are a few places where we don't want the grass, like completely vertical or horizontal, just sticking out of the sides of these. Grass doesn't really do that, so we're not going to be putting grass like on the sides of these banks. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to weight paint mode, and we have to select our plane first, and then we're going to go to weight paint mode, and you can see it turns it blue. Now this is kind of like the sculpting mode, except it's not sculpting. You're just drawing on where you want your particles to go. So this isn't used just for particles, it has other uses too, but mainly it is particles, and a lot of people use it for particles. If you don't have a vertex group, which is what we're creating here, selected in your particles, it'll just put it everywhere on the mesh, and that's not really something you want to do unless maybe you have like actual particles coming out of your mesh. But anyway, we're just going to draw on where we want our grass to be, which is pretty much everywhere except for those few places that I mentioned before. So we're just going to sculpt, or not sculpt, we're just going to draw on here, and then draw up here. If you click F, you can resize your brush. Now I'm just going to draw up here, and then draw up here, and yeah. Okay, so now that we have that, this is pretty much where we want our grass to be. Maybe a little bit down here too, since it's not completely vertical right there. Alright, So I'm pretty sure that's where I want my grass to be. So we can just go out of weight paint mode now. And if we go down here to this little particle, or this little ball with 3 other balls coming out of it, that's our particle properties tab. So we're just going to click that. Add a new particle system by clicking plus, and we're just going to name this grass. Then we're going to name this grass, and then we're going to change the emitter to hair. So as you can see right now, how I was talking about earlier, if you don't have a vertex group set, it'll just place it everywhere, which we don't want. So we're going to go down here to vertex groups, and our density is going to be this group. And you can see now it is only placing it where we drew on our plane. So now to actually get it to show the grass instead of this like hair, if we go to render and we go render as collection, excuse me, we can see that we have this collection tab down there. And if we click instance collection and click grass, we see that all of our grass is here, but it's sideways. So to fix that, we can go over here to our grass. I'm probably just going to select all this, and I'm going to click RX, nope, RY, yeah, RY negative 90, and that's just going to flip it all negative 90 degrees. And so if we go over here and click object rotation, I did not do it. Just keep rotating this until it is correct. And it was correct the first time, but I didn't click the object rotation. So, okay, I'm not the smartest person. Okay, so now that we have that, it is a little bit small. So what we can do is we can just increase the scale to maybe something like that. And if we look now, we can see that our grass is here on the plane, but there's not a lot of it. Now you could come up here and just change the number, and I'm going to do that to maybe 2500. But what we can also do is come down here to children and change it to interpolated, and then display amount, change it to something like 2, and then render amount something like 2. Now if we look, we should see that we have a lot more grass in our scene, which we do. So I might change the number back down to 1000. And yeah, okay, so that's looking pretty good for our grass right now. You see there are some dark shadows from the grass itself, but that's just what it is. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that is just shadows. I think it is, but yeah, okay, so basically I might delete those and then redo this particle system, and I will be right back. Okay, so we are back with our grass now fixed. For some reason they for the image ones it just didn't really work. So yeah, but our grass is back and it's actual grass now, and you can see through it and stuff, which is cool. But now we're going to basically do the exact same thing, but with a different collection. So I'm going to add a new particle system and put hair as the particles. And I'm going to go down here, render as collection, and I'm probably going to pick flowers next, and then object rotation, and then come down here, interpolated, put it as like 2 or something, and then come down here to vertex groups, click group. We're going to be using the same vertex group because we all want them to be in the same area. I'm going to increase the scale to where they are a little bit bigger than the grass, and then going to increase scale randomness a little bit, and then change the seed. Okay, so now if we look at this, we should have flowers. And we do. We now have grass and flowers, which is pretty cool. So now what we're going to do is grab some rocks, bring the rocks over a little bit, RY -90, just to flip them on their right side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just place some rocks in the scene. It doesn't really matter where you place them. It's just, yeah, you pretty much just do whatever you want with the rocks. I'm going to be kind of placing them over on the banks. So, yeah, because I feel like banks have more rocks than non-banked areas. So I'm just gonna bring the other two rocks over here too. Shift D, bring some over here. Bring one maybe over here. Bring one maybe over here. Yeah, just something like that. Now if we look in our scene, we should see that we have rocks, which we do. And I do believe I need to increase the roughness on the rock shader. So if we come up here, if we click on a rock, we see our rocks, and we change the glossy down a little bit, change the wetness to a very low, like that, and then yeah. So now we have rocks in our scene, so that's pretty cool. Now we're going to add some trees. So bear with me, I have not opened these trees yet. I got them from Blend Swap, so I'm going to hope they work. If they don't, I'll pause the video, find some more trees, and then I'll link those in the description. So okay, so those trees did not work, so we have a new pack called the Trees and Bushes pack, also from Blend Swap. So we're gonna hope that works better than that. So we're just gonna append, go to where we have it saved, and then Trees and Bushes, object, select all, append, and then we can bring them down because this plane is tremendously huge for some reason. Bring these, which I assume were lights. Delete that camera up there. Select the trees by hitting B to box select, and just kind of bring them over here to where they're closer to the scene. Scale them down a little bit and stuff. So now we have some trees and bushes, which if we look at them, they are right here. So I like this tree, so I'm gonna grab it. We're gonna use this as our first tree. So I'm just going to basically place this around different areas, rotating it, resizing it a little bit, just different stuff to make it look like it's not the exact same tree. You know, the usual. I also don't want a ton of these, so bring some over like that. And then we're going to get a different tree, which I also kind of want to be green. So if we look over here, this one seems pretty cool. Just bring this one over, and then size it down a little bit. And then we can have stuff like this. And I don't want a lot in the middle, but I also don't want it to be completely empty either. So yeah, I'm gonna get another tree here, kind of like this one, which I might have already had over there actually. think I might have, but we're going to grab it again. Just kind of put them in different areas. Oops, not camera view. Then we're just going to kind of cover up the back here with just different trees. So I don't really want anybody seeing the back area because it's not really a focus of the image. So now if we look at what we have so far, we have this little forest kind of area, which looks pretty cool, and it's blocking a lot of light right now, but that doesn't really matter because we're going to be adding our own light anyway. So yeah, so speaking of that, let's go ahead and set up our main light in the scene, which is going to be that ring. So we're going to go ahead and delete our point light here that's default in Blender that we haven't deleted yet. I'm going to go over here to world properties and change the color to black. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can shift A, add a mesh, add a circle, bring the circle out somewhere where you can see it, hit tab and hit F. That'll fill the circle. And then what you can do is you can hit I and then inset the face to something like that, and then click delete and faces, and now you have this ring. You can also hit E, select it, and hit E to extrude it, which is what I'm going to do, and then we can RX90 to rotate it. Now if we bring it over here towards the center and just kind of bring it up like that, and then I'm going to click the material tab, give it a new material, make it an emission shader, which is up here somewhere. There it is. Give it a blue color, a super blue color. And then you get a strength of like 10 to start off with. I think that's too little, but we're gonna try it. Now if we look, we should be able to see that it has indeed done something. So now that we have this, what we can do is, if we select this tree, we can change this material to a more greenish color, and you should be able to see that yes, does work like that. So now that we have that, we're going to grab some bushes, bring them over here, just kind of put some bushes around to cover up our laziness. And bushes can go on the banks, so we can go ahead and do that if we need to. And I'm also going to put some back here. Rotate some, grab another one, bring it over here. And if we look at it now, we can see that the bushes kind of help hide some stuff, which I think is pretty cool. I'm also going to scale the ring up and then put it in the ground some more, like that. And you can see that now we have this, which is looking pretty cool. I'm also going to push some bushes and stuff over here to where it's not just fully kind of empty. This area right here. And then we can go ahead and get our camera set up. So I want the camera to be kind of right here in the center. So I'm going to position my viewport there and then hit Control Alt and 0 on my keyboard, and it'll bring the camera to where you're looking. So for this render, what I like to do is I like to make square renders. You don't have to do this. You can just do 1920 by 1080, but for me, I'm going to use 1080 by 1080. And then it will bring the camera like this. I'm going to move the camera over a little bit because I don't think it's exactly centered. And hit G in the camera view to move it. If we look through the camera view, we can get an idea of what it's going to look like. And I feel like that is pretty good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add our little dude. So I'm going to click File, Import. I believe it was an FPX I saved it by. And then where I have them saved, which is this. So now we have our guy. And if we scale him up, oh, not that much. And then RZ 180. We can then position him in the grass, kind of like that. Now we can see what kind of, I'm gonna make him centered a little bit more. And we can see how it looks with him in there. And it looks pretty good. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add some bushes over here because it looks very, very barren over there. And just kind of cover up that it doesn't have a real background to it. So I think that's good. I'm going to go ahead and save it right now. And then we can go into our rendered view again. And we can see that it is definitely looking a lot better. I might add another tree. Maybe a few more just trees back here and stuff. To kind of block out that it isn't really anything back there. So now we have this, which is looking pretty cool, but I am going to add one more thing. I'm also probably going to move our guy back by clicking our armature and then just moving him back to maybe right there. So that's looking pretty cool. And then what I'm going to do is I have this wing model that I've had for a long time. It might be an OBJ, not sure, but it's not an OBJ. FBX desktop, it's not an FBX either. What is it? One file location. It is an FBX, but it's in another folder. So import FBX desktop, this folder, and wings. So should import them, and yes it did. And we're just going to scale them up a little bit, kind of angle them downward, and then just fit them to his back. I've used these wings in a lot of my renders and I find them really cool. So yeah, we're basically just gonna fit these wings to his back to where they look at least semi-natural. And believe that should be good. And if we look now, we should be able to see that our wings are indeed in the scene. So, and they are. So, now that that is done, I can go into the wings, and there is an emission shader on one of the things. Emission. I'm just going to brighten it up a tad. We can see how that looks. And that looks pretty cool. So I think that should be it for the render. So if you guys did enjoy, then make sure to leave a like. Actually, it's not the end of the render. I have some more things to show. So first thing is we're gonna make sure this ground, yeah, okay. So first thing is I'm gonna add a depth of field effect to the camera by clicking depth of field, making the focus object our guy, and then bringing the f-stop down to maybe 2.3 and seeing how that works, because I don't want it too blurry, but I also don't want it to just be nothing. So I think that might be good. So now we have that. I'm also going to try to add volume, which might destroy my computer, but we're going to try it anyway. So I'm just going to add a cube, scale it up to where it covers the whole scene, add a new material, click this, and then go up here all the way. Oh, there it is. Disconnect. And then volume, add a principled volume. There. And make the density like 0.1 or something like that. And it needs to be larger. And if we look, we should see it destroying my computer as we speak, but there should be volume in the scene. And there indeed is volume in the scene. So I'm going to change it to maybe 0.07 to where we see more of the force that we worked out so hard on. Maybe 0.03, because this is way too intense right now, and I can already see more of the forest in the background. So I do think that that is it for the tutorial. So if you guys did enjoy it and learn something, then make sure to leave a like on the video. Thank you guys so much for 1,000 subscribers. It means so much to me that 1,000 people have watched my idiotic tutorials and learned something and click subscribe. So thank you guys so much for 1,000 subscribers. I decided to come back with a more lengthy and in-depth, complicated tutorial for my 1,000 subscribers. So thank you guys so much. Here's to 1,000 more. My name is Michael from Polygon Island. I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.